I would like to welcome all of you to our second Kitabhkahana today. We will be discussing Dr. Anirudh Deshpande's book today, The Hope and Despair, Mutiny, Rebellion and Death in India, 1946. For those of you who are coming for the first time, the format of this event is relatively straightforward. It will feature two interlocutors, a senior academic and the other a student, each speaking for 20 minutes, and the ruminations and responses of the author for about 20 minutes, followed by, of course, the question and answer session. So before we move on, I would like to introduce today's interlocutors. We have Professor Amar Farooqui from the Department of History and a student, my senior, Kriti Tripathi from MA Final Modern Section. So I would like to request Dr. Deshpande to please, Kriti, to please.
Just introduce the structure that I've formed for this presentation. So it is basically divided into four parts. The first part is the introduction, dealing with the orientation of Professor Deshpande and how he's through which lens he's seeing this particular event, the RA and Mutiny. The second section will actually be the larger context in which he's placing this event, which is actually a global context of the Second World War and the local and the national context of Quit India movement and other such movements like INA trials and RAF, that is the Royal Indian Air Force strikes of 1945. Then thirdly, I'd like to move forward towards the main theme, which what I interpreted as the main theme of this text, which is the deconstruction of the mainstream nationalism, and looking at the period of 1945 and 46 through a different lens of revolutions and not of the Congress and not through the lens of the Congress or the Muslim League. And fourthly, lastly, I jump to the conclusion. So, starting now from. So whenever we look at most of the history books, and if we are looking in the period between 1940 and 47, so we'll have a very clear-cut narrative about and there will be a clear-cut chronology of the events starting from 1942, Quit India movement, the arrest of the leaders, 1943, this is the formation of the INA under Subhash Chandra Bose. Then 1945 coming the Shimla Conference or the Wavell Plan. 1946 again the coming of the cabinet mission, its failure, and then the most darkest day, August 16, 1946, the direct action day when the communal riots start, and then the coming of Lord Mountbatten plan, then failure of Gandhi Jinnah talks, and partition, and finally independence. But here in this whole narrative, we are actually missing a very important event, and this book is actually a microscopic study of this event, and it is called the Royal Indian Navy Mutiny of 1946, which actually started on 18 February 1946 in Bombay, and then it was followed in Karachi in the same week. So now I would like to throw a light on what factors actually caused the writing of this book, and it is very clearly stated in the preface of the book, which is Dr. Deshpande's Marxist and So his Marxist and subaltern orientation towards seeing the history, and the main inspiration is actually coming from the book which Sumit Sarkar had written, and it's the modern India, and it is seeing this event through Marxist perspective, and which is very different from the official point of view which the mainstream nationalists are going to take. And the aim of the book is actually to attempt to complete the revolution which was left unfinished by the mutineers of 1946. Now, straight going to the sources which he has taken. So during the initial period of his research, he was actually very much, he had faced so many problems because he had only two sources. The first was B.C. Dutt's autobiography of this revolt, and B.C. Dutt was actually the part of this revolt himself, and he had written a book called the mutiny of the innocents, it was not a historical source, so actually it could not have helped him very much in his research. But then through a stroke of luck, he got to National Archives and he got a vast corpus of papers which are called the RI Mutiny papers. And there he had got so many reports from the War Department, from the Defense Department, and it basically discussed the recruitment processes during the Second World War and the demobilization process which actually followed after 1945. And there is also, and he has also looked at the handbooks of the Indian Army relating to Dogras, Gurkhas, which actually is pretty much discussing about the racial concept, the racial theory, the martial race theory of the British, which they were actually using for recruitments in Indian Army. So now we are going to discuss the causes of this mutiny, and these are not any immediate causes. He has actually given a very detailed study of the long-term causes which actually caused the 1946 rebellion. So now it can be actually divided into two parts. So the causes for rebellion in the military quarters, and secondly the rebellion in the civilian quarters. So for the military, so we'll first look at the military reasons of the causes which I'm really
very nervous.
Relax. You're doing fine. You're doing a great job. Absolutely fine. Relax. Take it easy. All the time.
Don't rush. Take slowly.
Everybody's enjoying what you're saying. Take it easy.
So looking at the long-term causes of this event, so it actually concentrates on two basic themes, which is of recruitment and the process of demobilization, which was actually a very failed process. So now looking at the recruitment process, so from after the mutiny of 1857, they had been actually following a scheme of the martial race theory, which was actually introduced by who was then Commander-in-Chief of the Indian Army, Frederick Roberts, and this theory said that the Indian population can actually be divided into two parts, the martial races and the non-martial races. And according to his theory, which was so observed, 90% of Indian people were non-martial and only 10% qualified as martial race, so-called martial races. So now they were actually following this theory of martial races till 1939, and it was the cause of the backwardness of Indian Army. And Professor Deshpande, he would say in his book that Indian Army during the Second World War, it was the most backward army in its mentality, and there was obviously no technological growth in this army. So there was this failure on the part of the British. Now, wartime recruitment actually, because of there was a lot of demand for soldiers during the wartime. So now they could not stick to this theory of the martial races, and now they were recruiting people from tribal areas. Just for example, the Santals or the Mundas, which actually were the non-martial people, the so-called non-martial people for so long, and they were not recruited for so many years. They had not been recruited in the army because of their several revolts in the 19th century. But now they are recruiting them. So now, how do you actually attract these people to this service of the military? So there was a very wartime there was a recruitment propaganda going on, and he compares it to election campaigns. And there were handbooks, and there were several leaflets, and there were several posters and films, and they are just glorifying this service, this so-called service in the Indian Army, that it is such an honorable job. And for the case of the RA mutineers, they would say that even after the end of the war, you will have a permanent job, and this was the trap, because of which many young people, they just got into this trap. But the reality was something different when they actually got into this job of RIN. They had to face a lot of racial discrimination. There were payment problems, there were allowances problems, and the main problem actually came after the war, which was the demobilization process, and it was a failed process because the accounts of the soldiers, they could not be settled, and the state could not give neither land nor jobs nor money to these young men. So there was discontent growing on. Now we'll talk about the civilian, why there was discontent among the people of Bombay and Karachi. So after the end of the war, there was rising unemployment. Food shortage, hunger, black market, and this was actually the frustration which was evident throughout the country. And now, what is the common thread which is binding both of these quarters, the military quarter and the civilian quarter? And the common thread was actually the memories of the popular nationalism which went back to 1942, the Quit India movement. Then the INA trials of 1945, and then the Royal Indian Army strikes of 1945. Now looking at the event itself. So now actually we have looked at the causes for the background for this revolt. So it started on 18th February in Bombay, and it was started by the HMIS Talwar, and the full form for HMIS is His Majesty's Indian Ships. So now they went on a hunger strike on 18th February, and it was basically because their grievances were not redressed. The next day, they went out in the city of Bombay, and then they tried to spread this message among the civilians, and they wanted their support. But in just a span of 2 or 3 days, these people were arrested, and they just wanted help from the nationalist quarters. They wanted a positive response from the nationalist leaders, but then their hopes, just as the title of the book is Hope and Despair, so their hopes just got transformed into despair because there was no support from the nationalist quarter. For them, it was an embarrassing moment in the history when they were very busy in the transfer of power, and the Muslim League was busy with its demand of Pakistan. So it was something which was not needed. This was an unwanted event in the history of 1946, and we just ignored these people. And this actually gave a free hand to the British to suppress this mutiny very brutally, and this mutiny was actually suppressed in the same way in Bombay and then in Karachi, and nearly 400 people, they lost their lives. So coming to the main theme of the book, which actually struck me a lot. Yeah. So if you see from the perspective of these mutineers, their only demand was that there were payment grievances, that they are not getting enough payment, that the demobilization process, it was not actually serving their needs. But now Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, in his press release, he had promised these people that after independence your needs will be fulfilled, and we will look what we can do into this matter. But it was never done. So the main argument of the book then comes that, was there a transfer of power at all? Was there a moment where when India got freedom in 1947? Because the conditions of these people, they were the same in 1946, and they remained same even after 1947. They did not get jobs. There was no source of livelihood at all. Now coming back to the critique of the mainstream nationalism. So it is the idea that any movement which is not started or regulated or controlled or ended by Indian National Congress is something which would be discarded, which would be condemned, and which would be left for the mercy of the British state. And it is what the nationalist leaders were doing at this time. Because Gandhiji, when he released his statement on 3rd March 1946, so I would like to quote it from Harijin, that they were thoughtless and ignorant if they believed that they would deliver India from foreign domination by their might. They should have waited for the guidance and intervention of political leaders of their choice, and they actually set a bad example. And these innocent mutineers, they were thinking that we would be called as patriots and we would be called as satyagrahis, because they had started the movement by hunger strike only. So they were thinking that we would get appreciation, but then it was a very opposite take on it. And even Jawaharlal Nehru would said that it was an act of indiscipline on their part. So now where do you find where does the contradiction lie? So when you compare this movement with the approach of the Congress ministries of 1942, so during this meeting in August in Bombay, Gandhiji has said that he had just declared do or die. So we have to throw the British out of this country now, and we won't take this violence. But then on the very next day, all the nationalist leaders, they got arrested, and but the Quit India movement was going on even after their absence, and there was a lot of violence. There was attacks on post offices and all the symbols which actually represented the colonial state. But then very interesting thing happened in 1943 when Gandhiji he sat on a fast for 21 days, and he just said that it is against the leonine violence of the state, and they are repressing the kind of violence by which they are repressing the masses of the country. It is something which is very deplorable. And then so this was, and when he was asked about his take on violence, so he just said he had this idea of a superior violence and an inferior violence. So the violence of the state is superior, and the people are just responding to that violence. So that is somewhere it just got justified that they can resort to violence. But this was not the take in this case of RIM mutineers. It was an irresponsible act, and it was seriously not the case for the Chauri Chaura people, which was again a blot on the nationalist history, because then it just got out of hand. So you just then leave these people, you tag them as irresponsible people, you tag them as wayward people, you tag them as Gunda Raj, but it's actually the basic problem is that they are the people who are actually not following your guidelines. They are actually initiating something on their own, and it can be said for Ambedkar as well, because Ambedkar would not be there in Quit India movement. He won't be there in any movement with the Dalit community, and then he would be tagged as anti-national or a British sympathizer. So this thing is very clear that it's the fallacy of it is the legitimacy of the mainstream nationalism. It should be questioned now. Then secondly, the other very contradictory thing about the take of the nationalist leadership was that during the 1939 Tripuri mission, the Tripuri session of the Congress, they were very unequivocal about their opposition to Subhash Chandra Bose when he said that when this was clear that he has this idea that we should do anything to free India, to liberate India of these people, and he was supporting the Nazis and the Imperial Japan. He was there, but Nehru, Gandhi, and everyone was against this thing, and they just said that Nazis are the biggest enemies, and if you compare British, then they somewhere they become just secondary. So you can't go to Nazis and you can't support them. So they were clear about their opposition against Subhash Chandra Bose. But then something very interesting and something very peculiar happens in 1945, and they are actually, when the Congress ministries, they are actually mobilizing people for the support of these INA prisoners of war against the trials which are happening. So now they are actually using this as a propaganda. And Professor Deshpande would say that here you actually come to know that nationalism is not used as a movement, it is actually used as a political ideology, because in the next year, 1946, there would be elections for Legislative Assembly, and you don't clearly have anything, you don't have any contribution from the Congress had nothing to say, they don't have, from 1940 to 1946, they have done nothing because they were in jail, and the Communist Party of India and Muslim League, they had gained so much popularity. So now they want something, a trope of a militant nationalism which they can use for their own success in the Legislative Assembly, the legislative elections. Yeah. Then the most important thing which struck me was that the despair about which the title talks, the despair did not end in 1946 itself. Even after 1947, they did not get jobs. So again, the question comes that was there really a transfer of power? And the post-colonial state was actually a mirror image of the colonial state, because it did not redress the grievances of the INA mutineers. Lastly, there is another theme which I found interesting, that there's a different take. There are different definitions of violence going. Like there are different. We can witness different definitions of violence because certain incidents of Indian history would be used as a trope, or to invoke the memories of Indians against the violence, against the brutal violence committed by the British. For example, the repression of the 1857 mutiny or the Jallianwala Bagh, or even suppression of the 1942 Quit India movement. But then it is also, but using violence as a trope, it is also an act of picking and choosing, that you are picking certain incidents from history and then you're just showcasing them. But certain incidents are just being forgotten because in this event, nearly 400 or 500 people, they lost their lives, and they were civilians, they were unarmed people, but then no one would have sympathies with these people, and it would not be used at all. Yeah. And again, the question comes that was there really a transfer of power? Because the secondary task which the nationalists had kept, that they would resolve them after independence, of resolving gender issues, class issues, caste issues, and communal issues, and they were left unfulfilled, and we still have that box lying there. The major argument of the book then lies what Ranjit Guha would say in his counter-insurgency piece, that the peasants, whatever they are doing, it's not something very spontaneous because they have very much to lose. But then the disheartening fact, the saddening fact is that the people who have very less to lose are actually glorified in this history. And hopefully we have actually moved from this kind of history writing, and now we are focusing on certain events, and this book is again an example. So finally, I would like to conclude. So there are some lines which are written by the poet Sahil Ludhianvi in the praise of these naval mutineers. And so I will just recite those lines, and then I will just add 4 lines which I have written as a foreword to that. So he just says, वह कौन सा जज्बा था जिससे फरजूदा निज़ामे जिस्त हिला, झुलसे हुए वीरान गुलशन में एक आस उम्मीद का फूल खिला. So this umeed is what he is talking about, the hope which just gets transformed into despair very soon. Now I just add 4 lines which is actually the representation of what happened after 1946 with these people. पर बटी हुई राजनीति के चलते ये फूल खिलने से पहले ही मुरझा गए, और फिर क्या था, जल्द ही अंग्रेजी हुकूमत के पैरों तले आ गए, और देखते ही देखते 1 साल के भीतर कराची और बम्बई 2 अलग मुल्कों में समा गए.
Now I request Professor Farooqui to share his thoughts on the book.
Thank you, Kriti, for the presentation in which you brought out so well some of the important themes, the larger historical issues which Dr. Deshpande has dealt with. And I'd like to congratulate Deshpande for this book. Which fills a very important gap in our understanding of the final phase of the national liberation struggle. And as Kriti pointed out, and Pandey has pointed out in the beginning of his book, the kind of historiography that we have on this phase, that's 2 years immediately after the Second World War, there's a kind of amnesia about things, about moments like the RIN mutiny. And in fact, apart from perhaps Kitabhkahana Banerjee's old book written in the 50s, and some discussion of the RIN mutiny in Amit Gupta's book in 45, 47 period. I don't really think that there's anything substantial that makes this book a very important contribution. Standard textbook accounts really don't say anything about this period other than the negotiations for that transfer of power term that is a bit of a problem, but nevertheless I'll use that term. This is a historiography which ignores the mass upsurge which took place immediately after the First World War. In fact, some of these movements had already begun in 1944, before the war ended. So I'm referring here to the Tenaga movement, the important Punapra Bailar struggle, Telangana, and of course the RIN mutiny. So this is a mass upsurge which which hasn't really made it to textbooks. And the attitude towards the RIN mutiny, the amnesia that I'm referring to, is a political deliberate amnesia, particularly in the period immediately after independence. And I would like to quote a statement by B.C. Dutt, whose book Mutiny of the Innocents has been referred to by Kriti, and someone who was a participant and who took seriously the promise that was made that those who were the mutineers, they would be, after independence, they would be given a place in the Indian Army, Navy. And this is a very moving statement that he makes. So he landed up at the Navy office in Bombay with a press clipping which where this assurance had been given that these people would be given a place in the Navy. So he says, the Royal Indian Navy by then was the Indian Navy. But some of the British officers were still around, though Indian officers were in a majority. I noticed from the stripes on their shoulders that independence had paid the Indian officers handsome dividends indeed. These were disciplined officers. These were people who had not mutinied, they had not disobeyed orders. Most of them, even after a lifetime of service, could not have reached the ranks they were now raised to. I was recognized immediately. I stated my business and showed the press clipping to the officer to whom I was taken. He said he had received no official instructions. Then he terminated the interview with the cryptic comment, "A navy is not run by newspaper headlines." Needless to say, he was an Indian. So this was a reflection of the attitude towards the RIN ratings who had participated in the mutiny. And in fact, for quite some time, this was also a problem, in terms of dealing with the former INA soldiers. In fact, even though, as you rightly point out, they later did get recognition, and that was an act of appropriation. But for a long time, this thing of whether they should be classified as freedom fighters or not, that remained a big issue. So, as Kriti also pointed out, this was an unwanted meeting. And at a time when negotiations are going on with Wavell and Mountbatten, the two last viceroys who actually carried out these negotiations, it was, it made them uncomfortable. It made the national leadership, the dominant sections of the national leadership, uncomfortable with something like the RIN mutiny. Not only the RIN mutiny, but with many of the other, movements that were then taking place. After all, this was a mutiny that would soon pass on to the newly independent nation state. So this was something that made them very, very uncomfortable, and therefore the dominant sections of the national leadership, they did not own up this movement. And I'll come back to that point later. And immediately after the mutiny began on the 18th of February 1946, the mutineers, they appealed to the national leadership, but most of them refused to own up this movement. Rather, they're extremely hostile, in fact, to this movement. And but on the other hand, the naval ratings, they paid full respect to all the major political formations. Hence, their symbolic act of having the flag of the Congress, the flag of the Muslim League, as well as the flag of the Communist Party of India, which is also represented in the cover of the book. That was a very, very important symbolic sort of message that they were sending. But when we do belong, we don't stand apart from the efforts, the endeavors of these political formations, but we are very much part of them. But all that they got in return, except for the communists and the left wing, it's not just the communists, but also sections of among the socialists, and I'll come back to that question later on, who they were extremely hostile to them. Now, the mutiny, as Deshpande points out, took place in Bombay, in Kochi, in Visakhapatnam, Andamans, also far away Aden, but Bombay was the really important center of these 6 of the nearly 80 ships which were, where this mutiny took place. Nearly 60 were actually stationed in Bombay itself. And Bombay, the problem was very specific, and Anirudh, devotes considerable space to a discussion on the process of demobilization. So the Navy itself was a relatively new wing of the military organization of the British colonial state, and it was only the compulsions of the Second World War that made them expand the Navy, which meant that a large number of young Indian recruits had to be found, never at the officer level. That's something you should be very clear about. So, he's also gone into the sort of whole process of recruitment, the way the kind of attractive posters, propaganda material, booklets that were published, the large number of documentaries. I think that list which you provide of documentaries, that appendix, is itself fascinating. You've seen some of those documentaries?
No,
they're not available.
They're not available.
So, but apparently the Navy produced a large number of these documentaries to attract young men to the service, giving them assuring them that they would be absorbed after, at least some of them would be absorbed after the war was over. That's something that never really happened. They were really treated very, very shabbily. And that's what caused the initial resentment in Bombay, as Kriti was pointing out. And in fact, the demobilization was such a messy affair that there was no proper arrangements for their transit, for paying for their. In fact, most of them went back without being given even money for their return ticket. So that caused a great deal of resentment among the sailors. So it's really these sailors who are sort of being demobilized at Bombay, who now are not really expecting to be recruited, to be sort of absorbed into the Navy on a permanent basis. So that resentment is building up, and on the 18th, this mutiny begins with the mutiny on the what was the shore communications establishment, the HMIS Talwar. Yeah. So that became the kind of headquarters. Talwar became the headquarters of the RIN mutineers at Bombay. And initially, as Kriti rightly points out, that they did not engage in any violence. So to assume that mutiny automatically meant violence, this would be incorrect. It was a non-violent protest, and a lot of support was actually mobilized for them in the city. And I think that's an important point which we need to keep in mind, that since this was happening in Bombay, and Bombay had a very strong left-wing and communist presence, particularly the trade unions in Bombay, which were actually under the control of the CPI, which was affiliated to the CPI. They mobilized popular support in Bombay for the RIN mutineers, and that made this much more than a mutiny. So, in fact, the people, the toiling people of Bombay became part of this struggle, and that is what really unnerved the British authorities, and of course it also unnerved the dominant sections of the national leadership. And finally on the 26th, by the way, the president, it was sort of very well organized, the strike itself, and there was a strike committee with MS Khan as the president and Madan Singh as the vice president. So, it was not a chaotic affair. It was fairly well coordinated, well organized. Also, the contacts with the trade unionists, with the communists, and this became so it was been organized. And on the 22nd, as part of this attempt to mobilize, to show popular support for the RI mutineers, a call was given for a strike on the 22nd, and the violence which occurred was the violence of the state in trying to repress the strike as well as the mutiny, because the two things really came together, this strike and the mutiny itself, and this led to extensive violence, massive military deployment, and massive military European deployment. It's European troops which were stationed in Bombay, tanks were brought in, and this and since the authorities were quite sure that there would be no protest from the Congress leadership or the Muslim League leadership, they went ahead with this violent sort of suppression of the strike and the mutiny, and the firing that took place. The estimated number of those killed is about 400. We really don't know the exact, but this was the figure which the communists, the trade unionists, they quoted. Official figures were obviously much lower, but it's possible to assume that in fact it was perhaps even higher than 400. So massive casualties, and this is what prompted Sahib to write, the quote which you have just quoted, the refrain of which is "Ye Kiska Kaun Mara," which became a very, very popular song. In fact, it reappeared later on, that refrain in the song for a film, and quite rightly so, because the theme of that film actually was communalism, and a very strong political statement, really. So its usage actually was very, very appropriate Rahman Mala.
Yes. Shall
So this and this point needs to be underlined, because while in the historiography there's little reference, except of course writings by left-wing activists, communists, trade unionists. It does appear in their memoirs, their writings, but otherwise in standard textbooks, as I said, this doesn't really figure at all, or very in a very cursory kind of way. But if memory of the RIN mutiny remained alive, a lot of that credit really goes to those who were connected with the Progressive Writers Association and the IPP. So it remained important in their poems, in their plays, in their writings. So the Progressive Writers Association and those who were associated with the Progressive Writers movement, people like Sagar himself, Josh bhi aapne so there there is we need to sort of see how that memory remained alive through their writings, their plays, their poems, and so on. One whole chapter is devoted to an almost unknown facet of this uprising, and that is the uprising at Karachi. And this actually brings out important dimensions of the national, the anti-colonial struggle in its final phase, where the leaders of the Congress and of the Muslim League at Karachi, they were the followers rather than leading. So it was, in a sense, spontaneous. The support which was mobilized in Karachi among the people of Karachi in support of the naval ratings which were on the naval ships in the Karachi harbour, which was some distance from the actual city, but great deal of support was mobilized in Karachi city itself. And here there is a certain spontaneity, and it's when the Muslim locals or Muslim League and Congress leaders, they realize, well, this is an important issue on which people are mobilizing, is then that they start making their appearance. So this is that which is brought out in this sort of also a very important issue, I think, which we need to keep in mind, that the possibilities that this had for overcoming communal divisions. And that leads me on, in fact, to a larger question of how communalism really undermined the popular upsurge of this period. In fact, it's an irony of history that one of the most important peasant movements led by the left wing, led by communists, was taking place in a state which was simultaneously being partitioned and where the communal divide, I'm talking of Bengal and the Tibetan. So, the possibilities, the potential, in fact, which popular movements, popular uprisings had, popular upsurge had for overcoming the politics of religious identity and communalism is something that we really need to ponder over. And the fact that many of these uprisings were actually crushed, closed those possibilities, and that's the larger story that we are left with in when we are looking at Bombay of 1946 or Karachi of 1946. Bombay was to become a major sort of the communal incidents in Bombay were extremely violent. So a city which is so radical in its politics, suddenly within a few months is sort of engaged in some kind of communal bloodbath. And I'll just end with one comment, which is that this sections within Congress, particularly more radical sections within the Congress were extremely critical of the leadership, Patel, also Gandhi. In fact, Patel played a very important role, as your book shows, in making sure that support was not extended to the RIN yes. But there was a section of the more radical, progressive, within the sections within the Congress who were very critical, and the most important figure there is Aruna Asaf Ali. Symbolically, the most important figure there is Aruna Asaf Ali. So the heroine of 1942 is virtually disowned by Gandhi for her support. And that actually marked the beginning of the parting of ways after 46, 47, when the Congress Socialists left the Congress, or rather were thrown out of the Congress for all practical purposes. And Aruna Asaf Ali herself actually parted company with what she would have regarded as the less radical sections of the socialists, and they formed their own left socialist group. So it's not as if there was within the Congress, there was a consensus on this. There were sections which were very, very critical, but however, they were not really in a position to actually determine policy. And from the point of view of policy, it was the negotiations which were considered to be of paramount importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Farooqui. Now I request Deshpande.
Thanks, Kriti. Thanks, Amar. I think a lot has already been said about the book. So I'd like to basically put the book in a context, which is both academic and slightly personal. See, the origins of this book actually go back to the days when I was doing my MA at the Center for Historical Studies, which is now normally known as a fairly anti-national place. Even then it was not considered particularly very nationalist, despite the fact that the doyen of Marxist nationalist scholars, Professor Vipin Chandra, used to teach at that time. And to do an MA in the Center for Historical Studies in the mid-80s was to do a difficult thing. Because from 1983 onwards, a particular movement in Indian historiography had started. Something which we all refer to as the subaltern, rise of subaltern historiography, which happened in, to which the Department of History here was party in some way. There were scholars, but Shahid Amin and you had Anirudh and other people working here who had worked on subaltern historiography. Of course, Shubhi Sarkar also was very much part of the subaltern scheme of things at that time, in the mid-80s, before he decided to part ways with them, which is a different story of it. But then there was a small group of radical students in JNU who were left of the CPM there, left of the SFI. The SFI used to be fairly left in those days. Then it shifted to the center and gradually, before it shifted to the right. Now it doesn't really know where it is. Again, that we can debate. But there were people who were left of the SFI at that time. I used to be, since my childhood, I was a very rebellious and very indisciplined sort of person. Such people find a good home in the left-wing politics. So we began to question the entire paradigm of nationalist historiography, as we had learned from our days in our schools when the NCERT books were written by Bipan Chandra and Promila. Bipan Chandra's book is still recommended as the standard textbook in the ICSE class 11, 12 history syllabus. I was teaching, in fact, I was teaching my daughter a bit of history from this book a few years ago. And my memories became refreshed when I read this book. The same book we used to read way back in 1981 as school students. So there was Bipan Chandra and his cohort who used to teach nationalist history. They always used to, they never used to fail to refer to Gandhi as Gandhi ji. And we were not very fond of referring to Gandhi as Gandhi ji. There was a big difference. And we were beginning to discover new things about nationalism at that time. So we were growing out of our schoolboyish fascination for the official Marxist history as they were called in those days. Something which T.D. Kosambi used to call, if you see his exasperating essays, he labeled all these people poems, official Marxists. There are Marxists in India and there are official Marxists. The category was poems. Bipan Chandra would fit into the Bipan Chandra and the other Marxists who were powerful in ICHR and other places would fit into this poem category. And the poems used to tell us, look, there was a national movement in India which was led by the Indian National Congress. And there was a linearity to that movement. So the movement began with the formation of the Indian National Congress in 1885. And there was a big Swadeshi movement, after which things happened and so on and so forth. And there was a non-cooperation Khilafat movement, after which again things happened and so on. Those things were not that important, so we were not able to focus on these things. But various things used to happen in between the nationalist movements. And then there would be the civil disobedience movement, after which again things happened and so on. Then there would be this Quit India movement of 1942, which was supposed to be a great movement, which I've always found a rather inadvisable thing to do in 1942. At the risk of being called anti-national again, I can say that here in the Delhi University History Department. I think it was a very silly thing which the Congress did in 1942. I believe had it not launched that extremely, had it not launched that Quit India movement of 1942 and allowed the movement to be crushed by going into jail themselves. And the leadership went into jail, they were all packed off to Yalvada. So it was practically a leaderless movement. You had Aruna Asaf Ali wrote Aruna Asaf Ali, who led a very important socialist initiative. That you had the Prati Sarkar of Nana parties and other people. Yeah, but the movement was crushed, was put down, and the English within a few months had actually put down the movement. There was a lot of bloodshed because of the putting down of the movement, and in the recent work of Srinath Raghavan, you really find a very good description of how the English actually tackled the movement. And they regained control of India. But only for a short time, because the war actually, they could not hide the fact that the war exhausted the British Empire. And by 1945, the British Empire was completely exhausted. But this, the currents of the Quit India movement and the inspiration of the Quit India movement, the slogans and symbols of the Quit India movement combined with another movement which was started by Subhash Chandra Bose, but actually not started by Bose, because again, Bose becomes a hero. Actually, it was begun by a man called Captain Mohan Singh, who had formed the first INA in Malaya. Now again, that narrative again gets punctured, because see, about 60,000 Indian troops were taken prisoner by the Japanese. And we are then made to believe that a large majority of these people joined the INA, which is basically false. only about 20,000 troops taken prisoner by the Japanese joined the INA. 40,000 refused to join the INA. 40,000 troops, Indian troops, stayed loyal to their oath and preferred to stay in the horrible prisoner of war camps established in Malaya and Singapore and other parts of Southeast Asia by the Japanese. Many perished in those camps and many came out of those camps. So these people remained in the Indian army, some of them remained in the Indian army, and they were not in a mood to take back these INA people into the Indian army after the war and after independence. They said these guys are basically renegades. They joined the Japanese when we were fighting the Japanese. They are complicit in the war crimes which were committed against us. They were complicit in the war crimes committed by the Japanese across Asia at that time. And therefore we are not willing to take back these people. These people are not professional soldiers. They become heavily politicized. And if we take back these soldiers into the Indian army will be infected with politics after 1947. So the lines were very clearly drawn. Of course, when you talk about the Navy, these are the officers who sided by the British during the mutiny. There was a man called Lieutenant Nanda who was mentioned by name in the files, who I believe was the same as Admiral Nanda. He rose to become Admiral Nanda later. Everybody knows the family. No need to speak more about this. So there is, there were all sorts of Indians in the 1940s, from 1942 to 47, and all sorts of Indians were reacting to the situations which were developing very fast, because events were moving very fast from 42 to 47 in their own different ways. Now to pick out threads from these events and make a narrative was not a very easy task for somebody, for people like us who had been taught textbookish nationalist histories in the 80s, from the 70s, from 60s, 70s, 80s. Those days nationalism was a very important, nationalist historiography was still a very important force in Indian historiography. Now, of course, a different kind of nationalist historiography is becoming important. That's why this book becomes more, pertinent. So I did, I wanted to work on less known things about what was happening to the Indian people and what the Indian people as such were doing in the 1920s, 30s and 40s. Things on which nationalist historiography actually did not answer. And one of the things which I really wanted to work on were urban crowds. Because we were also influenced in those days by historians like Eric Hobsbawm and George Rudin, who have worked extensively on urban crowds, and we were also influenced by the French school of historiography, which looks at collective mentality, rumors, news, formation of collective mentality and so on. So all these things drove some of us. I was one of them, I was not the only one. I was one of those who was driven towards looking at crowds, looking at popular reactions, and we started looking at newspapers and the sources and the usual home political to which we used to be sent to look at in the archive. Nobody told us to do oral history at that time, I'm sure. And some of our professors, esteemed professors in JNU, and they told us to go and look around for oral testimonies of what happened in the 1940s and 50s. We would have really found a large number of people at that time, at least in the mid-80s, a large number of people would have been alive. And but of course our professors they never took the new ways of doing history seriously at that time. So we missed out on that. We missed out on doing oral histories of these people. Of course, later on I talked to army officers and so on, but that became part of my PhD, it's not part of my MPhil. So it is to see whether we could have a popular history of India, a people's history of India, in the fashion of Howard Zinn's people's history of the United States, or the kind of text he teach in fascism and so on, people like Yoshiaki who worked on what is called people's history of Japan, which actually gives you a very different understanding of what might have happened from the understanding which you get from the linear narrative of nationalism. It is that kind of history we were looking at. So we started looking at the working classes carefully, and I mean, although I was doing my MA and MPhil in JNU and then I did a PhD there, and this is basically a more developed version of my MPhil, the kind of work that in my MPhil. And the dissertation was done very fast. I wrote up the dissertation and submitted the dissertation in 14 months. So, and then I started working towards my PhD and so on. And one of the first, the Karachi chapter was sent to the IESHR, and I don't know why, but for some reason, Dharma Kumar liked it very much. It was reviewed and published in 1989 in the IESHR. And then another chapter was published in 2006. So I have two IESHR articles which are reproduced as chapters. But all this got, I was working on urban crowds, I was working on rumor, which reflects in the chapter on, especially on Karachi, and even Bombay. You look at the symbolism of the crowd, you look at crowd action, you look at rumors, you connect the rumors and the symbolic acts of the crowd to the collective mentalities which were developing in India since the last 40 years, since when these actions actually took place. And it is about contextualizing the activities of the actors on which the historian actually focused. So all these things were spread around them, and I had published papers here and there on these things. And then by the beginning of this century, some scholars suggested to me that I should do a book on these things, that all these things should be put together and produced as a book to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Mutiny of 1946, which was 2016. So that's how this book happened. So I put everything together, rewrote large parts of the chapters, and produced. I would like this book to be seen. I would like this book to be seen not only as a history of the naval mutiny of 1946. I'd rather that this book is also seen as part of a larger project of a people's history of India, to which some of us are contributing in their own way and might contribute. And this people's history of India intersects with, it is not that it exiles nationalism from its context. It is not a people's history of India divorced from politics or divorced from elite ideology. Elite ideology does play an important role in people's history as well. It's a dialectical history in which people interpret elite ideology in their own context. It's a different matter that the actions resulting from this popular interpretations of nationalism does not suit those who would want nationalism to remain in their time. So there is that dissonance comes in when you talk about it. But whenever people say, it's about I say it's about the naval mutiny, but it's also about the urban crowds in Bombay. It's also about the working classes of Bombay. It's also about the tremendous sacrifices made by the communist cadres in Bombay. In fact, there are names. Now we have some names also. When I went through the sources, very rarely do you have names when the crowds are being shot down by armed forces. And I think this is the first time in the history of rural India when tanks are used against civilians. So you can imagine the extent to which the Bombay working classes, the prostitutes, the destitute, how they took to the barricade. This is the first time you were fighting on the barricades. Now the barricade means a particular thing to the historian of the people. If you look at Juarez or if you look at the French historians, the barricade has a certain meaning. The barricade means that behind the barricade, the working class has almost established its roots. So they are looting the shops, they are taking away sugar, all those things which are expensive, which they could not afford during the Second World War because of rising prices, are being expropriated by the working classes, the prostitutes, and their friends and the street urchins. Everybody joins it. This is only the stimulus. And all this has been building up, because when I looked at the crowd actions of the Bombay working class and the Bombay people in general from the 1941 period till 1946, you find that every year the level of protest and the level of violence is growing. And every year the state is becoming more and more repressive towards the working class. And there is a very serious threat, because the Communist Party grows by leaps and bounds as a consequence of its having supported the Allies against the Germans, especially after 1941, when the Germans attacked the Soviet Union, and that changed the attitude of international communism decisively towards Nazism, against Nazism and against fascism. So it's part of this bigger struggle against Nazism and fascism that you find that there is a militarization and a certain revolutionary consciousness starts emerging, which harks back to the working class strikes, the great strikes of 1928-29, which shook Bombay to its core, about which Sabyasachi, Bhattacharya and other historians have written. In fact, 3 of the seminar papers, which would later become chapters of this book, were done with Sabyasachi Bhattacharya. He was my real mentor, actually. His long hand can be seen, should be seen in some of the chapters. He really mentored us very well. Parsati Gupta, he was not jailed, so Parsati Gupta was my external examiner for my MPhil. So his comments, of course, were gratefully acknowledged later on. And of course, then I wrote my first book on the Indian Army. He was co-edited with Parsati Gupta. Posthumously, he died, and then we put the volume together. It was popular. Yeah. So I'm so grateful for that. So I'd like to all of you to focus a discussion on this book in the context of whether we can have a different people's history of the colonial period, which intersects with nationalism, but which is not nationalism's captive, as we've been taught for so many years. And we do it at the risk of actually taking unpopular positions on this. We have to understand people as they were in the 1940s, 30s and so on. I'm very grateful for the comments made by Kriti, who has been my student, and Amar, my colleague, and all of you who are here. Thank you very much. And now have a discussion.